The chandelier above the Kang Foundation charity gala threw light like a controlled explosion, fracturing across crystal glasses, diamond earrings, the wet shine of 100 perfected smiles.
The
Georgina
minister
Lawrence
was
moved through
just
all of it the
telling
way
me
water
about
moves
the
through
new
rock,
exhibit.
finding the path of least resistance,
Oh, you
leaving no mark,
simply
disturbing
must
nothing.
see it.
She was not supposed to be noticed. That was the entire point.
This
Her uniform was
champagne
pressed,
is
her tray was steady.
exquisite.
Her eyes tracked the room in calculated sweeps. Who needed a refill? Whose glass was tilting dangerously? Which cluster of socialites was about to migrate and leave a minefield of abandoned flutes in their wake? She had been doing this for 6 years. She knew how to be invisible inside a crowd of people who had never once had to try. One good night, Diane had said on the phone, her voice carrying that particular warmth that meant she was asking for something and dressing it up as a gift. This is serious as money, Georgie. The kind of client that puts you on a different map entirely. Don't let that stubborn pride of yours talk you out of a life-changing opportunity. Georgina had not argued. The rent was due in 2 weeks. Karen needed winter boots. The good kind. The kind that actually kept the cold out. And the restaurant where Georgina usually worked had cut her Thursday shifts without warning or apology. Pride was a luxury she had quietly stopped affording around the time Karen learned to walk. She moved toward the center of the room. Every woman in the space was performing for one person. You could see it in the geometry of the crowd, the way bodies angled, conversations shifted, laughter crested just a fraction too high. The focal point of all that calculated energy was a man seated at the center table, with the stillness of someone who had long ago stopped being impressed by anything. Kang Min. She knew the name. Everyone in Seattle knew the name. What she hadn't expected was the face. Not the sculpted severity the business profiles showed, but something quieter underneath it. He was watching his own gala the way a man watches weather he cannot control and has learned not to fight. Bored. Tired of being the sun that everything else revolved around. The women at his table touched his arm when they spoke. He didn't pull away, but he didn't lean in either. His attention stayed at the surface, polite and absolutely absent. Georgina reached his table. She didn't smile. She never smiled at work. Not because she was unfriendly, but because she had learned early that smiling at powerful men in expensive rooms created a particular kind of misunderstanding she didn't have the energy to manage. She reached across, refilled his glass with the smooth efficiency of someone who had done this 10,000 times, and was already turning away when she heard nothing. No sound, no word, but felt, with the particular animal instinct that women develop when they've had to learn to feel a room, that she was being watched. She didn't turn around. She finished her loop of the table and moved on. Behind her, Kang Min sat with his refilled glass and an expression that no one at the table recognized, because no one at the table had ever put it there before. Near the entrance, a man in a dark suit, broad-shouldered, watchful in the specific way of someone paid to watch, pulled out his phone. He typed a single message and sent it. 3 days later, her phone rang at 8 in the morning, while Karen was eating cereal and arguing with the cartoon she was watching. Diane's voice was bright and deliberate. The Kang organization called me this morning. They want you, exclusively. A permanent catering contract across all their private events. A beat perfectly timed. Georgina. Are you still there? I'm here. She was watching Karen steal the last of the cereal directly from the box while pretending to watch television. I'm suspicious. You're always suspicious. It's one of your better qualities in small doses. Diane's warmth sharpened into something more direct. This is real. I verified it myself. I told them your rate, and then they doubled it immediately. This is the kind of contract that changes your life. Not improves it, changes it. I need you to walk into that meeting. Georgina was quiet long enough that Diane said her name again. Fine, she said. I'll take the meeting. She hung up and looked at Karen, who had abandoned all pretense about the cereal, and was now eating it with both hands. We're going somewhere today, Georgina said. Get dressed. Change, you're coming with me, Georgina said. You will sit quietly, you will draw. You will not say anything strange. Karen looked up. Define strange. This was, Georgina reflected, not the confidence-inspiring response she had been hoping for. Before this story gets even crazier, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far this story is reaching. And if this story pulled you in even a little bit, make sure you like this video. Obsidian was the kind of building that didn't need to announce itself. It sat on the edge of the waterfront like a statement. Dark glass and clean geometry, the architecture of a man who had stopped needing to impress people and started simply deciding what things would look like. The interior was cool and dim, even in daylight. the kind of space that made you lower your voice automatically. Kong Min's assistant, a woman of precise efficiency who introduced herself without offering a name, led them through corridors that Georgina catalogued automatically. Emergency exits. Sight lines. The way sound carried, old habits. The office was at the back of the building, large. Uncluttered to the point of austerity, with that specific kind of emptiness that spoke not of minimalism as a style choice, but of a man who had edited everything superfluous out of his life, and found, at the end of the process, that very little remained. Kang Min was on a call when they entered. Standing at the window, his back half-turned, speaking in Korean in a low voice that carried no particular urgency. He held up a single finger without looking at them, one moment, and continued speaking. Georgina sat. Karen sat beside her, opened her notebook, and began drawing without looking up. When the call ended, Kang Min turned. His eyes went to Georgina first. A quick, calibrating sweep, the kind of assessment she had learned to recognize and bristle at, and then dropped to the small girl beside her, who was now drawing with such focused intensity that she had not acknowledged his existence at all. He sat. He looked at Georgina. "I reviewed your work history," he said. His voice was unhurried. "You've rebuilt hospitality operations for 4 different venues in 6 years. Twice under new management within the first 60 days. I don't like waiting for things to stabilize," she said. "Instability is usually when the real problems are visible. That's a useful way to think." He slid a contract across the desk. "I want you an establishment, not just catering for private events. Full hospitality management across all 3 of my establishments. Menu curation, staffing oversight, client experience design." He named a figure. She had prepared herself to be composed when he named it. "That's very generous," she said. "It's what the work is worth." He said it without inflation, without performance. A simple statement of arithmetic. He reached for a card, turned it over, and wrote a number on the back. "My private line. If there are problems, I want to know before they become headlines." "Mr. Karen said," without looking up from her notebook. The room went still. Karen looked up, studied the space, with the particular gravity of a 6-year-old who had formed a very serious opinion. "Why is your office kind of dark? You should get more plants." Kang Min looked at her. Karen looked at him. Georgina opened her mouth to apologize and then closed it, because the expression on Kang Min's face was not the one she had expected. It was not irritation. It was not the careful blankness of a powerful man, deciding how to respond to something beneath his register. It was something genuinely caught off guard, the involuntary flinch of a person encountering something too honest to deflect. The corner of his mouth moved. Just barely, but it moved. "I'll consider it," he said. She started the following Monday. The work was exactly as complex as she had anticipated, and more interesting than she had allowed herself to hope. Kang Min's operations were efficient but cold. Technically functional, emotionally inert. The kind of hospitality that delivered the correct experience without ever making a person feel genuinely received. There was a difference between correct and warm, and Georgina had built her entire reputation on understanding that difference in her bones. She worked late on the 3rd evening, alone in the main room of Obsidian, with a layout schematic spread across 2 tables, rearranging the hospitality flow in her head and on paper simultaneously. The building had gone quiet around her. The night staff moved elsewhere. The city pressed against the dark glass from outside, remote and glittering. She did not hear him arrive. She became aware of him the way she had that first night, that animal alertness, the particular quality of attention. She looked up, and Kang Min was standing in the doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled to the forearm, watching her work with the expression of a man who found something genuinely worth watching and was surprised by that fact. "You could help instead of standing there," she said. He crossed the room without a word and sat across from her and looked at the schematic. He asked a question about the bar flow. She answered. He asked another. It was, she realized, not a performance of engagement. He was actually following her reasoning, actually thinking about it, offering a perspective that came from knowing the space across a decade that she didn't have. Somewhere in the middle of it, food arrived. She hadn't heard him call for it. A spread of Korean food, still steaming. The kind of meal assembled with specific thought, not generic abundance. She looked at it, then at him. "I didn't ask for this," she said. "I'm sure you haven't eaten since noon." She wanted to ask how he knew that. She decided, for reasons she couldn't entirely articulate, not to. She sat, she ate. The food was extraordinary, and she said so, and he said, "I know a place," with the brief ease of a man who had given up performing modesty about the things he actually took pleasure in. They talked. Not about work. About the other things. The ones that surface when two people are tired and the room is quiet, and there is good food between them. She told him about Karen's father, who had been charming and present right up until the moment he decided he wasn't, who had left before Karen could form a memory of him. She told him about the specific exhaustion of building everything alone, the way asking for help always seemed to come with a price she discovered only after paying it. He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I was 27 when my uncle died. He built everything you see here. When he was gone, all of it transferred to me, not because I was chosen, but because there was no one else. I inherited a city's worth of power and a life I had never agreed to live. Do you want to opt out?" she asked. He looked at the window. "There is no out. You understand that. There are only different kinds of in." She did understand. The door opened. A woman entered, tall, elegant, moving with the particular authority of someone who owns a room without needing to declare it. She had Kang Min's bone structure and sharper eyes. She placed a folder on the desk and looked at Georgina with an assessment so precise it was almost clinical. She said nothing. She left. Georgina was packing up her things when she asked the question that had been sitting at the back of her throat all evening. "Are you dangerous?" He didn't hesitate. He didn't manage his expression into something more palatable. He just looked at her, steady as a fact. "Yes." To me? The pause was different, not uncertainty, something more careful. "Never," she nodded. She didn't fully believe him. She had learned a long time ago that the people who said never were often the people who hadn't yet encountered the specific pressure that would make them reconsider. Words were easy. Time was the only honest test. She came back the next morning working anyway. She told herself it was because the work was not finished. She was not entirely wrong about that. The day Kang Soo-yeon learned her name, finally from Taeyang, came for the formal hospitality review. Georgina wore her armor of professionalism like a second skin and waited to be found insufficient. She was not found insufficient. Soo-yeon moved through the space with the particular attention of someone who has spent years learning to see past the surface of things. She examined the revised layout, the new supplier relationships Georgina had established, the staff retraining protocol she'd written in her own time and implemented across 2 locations in 8 days. When she was finished, she stood in the center of the room and was quiet long enough that Georgina had to resist the urge to fill the silence. "This is exceptional work," Soo-yeon said. Not warmly, but absolutely genuinely. "What of Kang Min?" she said. "Should I be concerned?" Soo considered the question with the gravity it deserved. "Kang Min has rules. They are not negotiable and they have not changed in 12 years. Civilians stay protected. People who work for him stay protected. If he has given you his word, it is the most reliable thing in this city." A pause. "Trust it absolutely." It was not reassurance. Reassurance was soft, designed to smooth anxiety without addressing it. This was information, delivered precisely, from someone with no reason to perform. Georgina nodded and let it settle. She was not expecting him to come that afternoon. Karen was in the corner of the main room, drawing. She had started accompanying Georgina to Obsidian on after-school days, occupying herself with focused independence, asking questions that made the staff laugh and occasionally made Georgina want to disappear into the floor. Beside her notebook was a small potted plant, wrapped at the base in a plastic bag from home. Kang Min arrived for a walkthrough and found them both. Georgina reviewing wine orders at the bar, Karen cross-legged on the floor with her notebook, the small plant sitting beside her with the quiet certainty of something that had always been there. He looked at the plant. "Your office needed it," Karen said without looking up. "I brought it from our house. It likes indirect light." He was quiet for a moment. Then he crouched down to her level, all 6 foot, whatever of him, in a $3,000 suit, folding himself onto the floor of his own club to look at a child's drawing, and studied the page. A princess who was also a chef. She was riding a dragon. The dragon was enormous and appeared to be laughing. "The dragon needs wings," he said with absolute seriousness. Karen looked at him. "She already has wings." He examined the drawing more carefully. "I don't see them." "They're invisible," Karen said. "She doesn't need to show everyone." Kang Min sat down on the floor, properly. Jacket and everything. Karen shifted over to give him room and handed him a spare pencil. Georgina stood in the doorway and watched it happen. This man who frightened an entire city, sitting cross-legged on the floor, listening carefully to a 6-year-old explain the metaphysics of invisible wings, and felt something move inside her chest. Something uncomfortable in the specific way that things are uncomfortable when they refuse to be explained away. When they left an hour later, Karen tucked her hand into Georgina's as they walked toward the elevator. She was quiet for half a corridor, which was unusual. Mommy, she said. Can Mr. Kang come to my birthday party? Georgina opened her mouth. She had the word ready. No, sweetheart, Mr. Kang is very busy, Mr. Kang has important things. When is your birthday? His voice came from behind them, unhurried, like he had been there all along. Georgina closed her mouth. Karen turned around and said, with the complete unguarded confidence of someone who had not yet learned that some doors should be knocked on before you walked through them. Saturday. I'm going to be 7. There will be cake. The chocolate kind. Kang Min looked at Georgina. Georgina looked at him. Neither of them said anything for a moment, that stretched and held something in it that neither of them had put there on purpose. I'll check my schedule, he said. He arrived exactly on time. Dark jeans, a simple black sweater, one gift wrapped without a bow, modest in the way of someone who understood that the gesture was the point, not the scale of it. Georgina opened the door and looked at him for a moment that was almost a full second longer than necessary, before she stepped back to let him in. Katie, across the living room, raised both eyebrows at Georgina with the eloquence of a woman who had 17 questions, and the wisdom to not ask a single one of them in the next 4 hours. He fit in. That was the thing that kept catching in Georgina's chest all evening, the way he fit in without trying, without performing normalcy. He helped set up the projector that Georgina had been fighting for 20 minutes. He lost deliberately at a game Karen explained with contradictory rules and genuine seriousness. When the chaos of 7-year-olds reached a specific decibel that made most adults retreat to the kitchen, he stayed in the living room and remained calm, in the way of someone who did not need the room to be a particular way to be comfortable in it. Dominic arrived late, assessed the situation in a single sweep, and spent the rest of the evening stationed close enough to Georgina that it was not accidental. He and Kang Min exchanged the particular greeting of two men who have immediately identified each other as relevant variables. Polite, precise, information exchanged without words. When Karen fell asleep on the couch, boneless, sudden, the collapse of a child who has spent every ounce of energy she possessed, Kang Min picked her up without making it into an event. He just did it, the way you do something when it is simply the obvious next thing. Carried her to the small room, tucked the blanket with hands that were more careful than his usual economy of movement suggested, and left without making anything of it. Georgina was alone in the kitchen when he came back. The party sounds had faded to the low murmur of adults in the living room. The city outside the window was doing its nighttime arithmetic. The kitchen was warm and bright, and very quiet. He stopped in the doorway. She was at the counter with her back to him, and she felt him there the same way she had felt him every time. That particular quality of presence unmistakable. "Do I ever smile?" she asked. She wasn't sure why she asked. She had been thinking about something weeks ago, a throwaway observation that had installed itself in her memory and refused to leave. He moved into the room, leaned against the counter beside her. "Once," he said, when Karen explained the invisible wings, "your whole face changed." A pause. "I've been waiting to see it again." She rose on her toes and kissed him. Brief, honest, the kind of kiss that doesn't perform itself, that is exactly what it is and nothing more or less than that. He kissed her back. One hand came up to her face, not grasping, not pulling, just cupping, with a gentleness so deliberate it was almost devastating, like someone being careful with something they had already decided mattered. They broke apart, both of them breathing slightly differently than before. "I should go," he said. "Why?" He looked at her. The question was genuine and he heard it that way. "Because if I stay, I'll want more. And you deserve someone who can give you a life without complications." "What if I don't want something uncomplicated?" she said. "Well, if I just want to be honest." He was quiet. Then he pressed his forehead to hers and she felt the breath he let out. Careful, slow, like something he had been holding. "Then you should know," he said, "that I am falling for you. Completely. In a way I don't know how to make it safe." A pause, and I don't have words for how much I wish I could. His phone rang. The sound broke the room in half. He looked at the screen. His expression changed. Not into blankness but into something else, something quieter and more dangerous. The face of a man who knows what a particular call means before he answers it. He answered. One sentence in Korean. Two, his jaw set. "I have to go." He said it like an apology, like a sentence he had been dreading having to say. He kissed her once more, quick, warm, undeniable, and then he was moving toward the door with that particular efficiency of someone who has trained themselves to transition fast. "Lock the door well," he said. "Taeyang will stay outside until morning." Then he was gone. Georgina stood in the warm kitchen of her apartment, one hand rising almost involuntarily to touch her mouth, and listened to the click of the lock and the muffled sound of the city outside and the soft breathing of her daughter down the hall. She thought about a man who had said never and meant it with his whole body. She thought about invisible wings, the kind you don't show everyone, the kind that are still real. She thought about what she had just started. She did not think she was afraid. She thought that might be the most frightening thing of all. The call came at 2 in the morning. She was awake anyway, had been lying in the dark since midnight, staring at the ceiling with the particular sleeplessness of someone who has kissed a dangerous man in her kitchen and is now paying the cognitive tax for it. When his name lit up her phone screen, something in her chest tightened before she answered. "Don't come to Obsidian tomorrow." His voice was controlled in the specific way of someone applying force to keep it that way. "Stay home. Don't open the door for anyone except me or Tae-young." What happened? A pause. She could hear something behind it, not panic but its more disciplined cousin. "Park Sung-jin hit 2 of my operations tonight. It's escalating. I'll explain everything when I can. I just need you to stay safe. Please." She had never heard him say please before. It landed differently than she expected. "Okay," she said. And then, because it was true, "We're okay, I know. A beat. I'm going to make sure you stay that way." He hung up. She lay in the dark and listened to Karen breathing. That small, steady sound that had been the constant North Star of her life for 7 years. And understood, with a clarity she had not been prepared for, exactly what kind of world she had walked into. Not the abstract understanding she'd carried since Su Yan's careful answer in the hospitality room. The real kind. The kind that lives in the body. Katie called 6 times before noon. Georgina answered twice and said the same thing both times. "We're fine, I'll explain later." Diane called once, in the early afternoon, and said simply, "Whatever you're caught up in, I'm here. No questions until you're ready." Which was more useful than any of the other calls put together. Dominic came without calling. He showed up at her door at 3 in the afternoon, looked at her face, came inside, and sat on her couch. He didn't ask anything. He didn't offer advice or opinions or the particular flavor of protective anxiety she had been braced for. He just sat with her, in the way of someone who understands that sometimes presence is the only help that counts. They watched Karen draw at the kitchen table. They ate takeout when it got dark. He left at 9 without making anything of it. She was grateful in a way she didn't have words for. The explosion happened at 3:47 the next morning. The sound was not as loud as she had imagined explosions would be. More percussive and sharp. A sound that moved through the building, rather than arriving from outside it. Karen woke and cried out once. Georgina was already in the doorway. "I've got you," she said. "I've got you, I've got you." She pulled Karen against her chest and moved to the window. 2 streets over, something was burning. She could see the orange light reflected in the glass of the buildings between. She could hear the first sirens beginning, somewhere in the distance. Her phone rang before the second siren reached them. "Are you hurt?" Kang Min's voice was stripped of everything except the question. "We're fine." She was watching the fire. "Pack a bag. You and Karen. Enough for a week. Taeyong is 4 minutes away." A pause. "Don't argue with me tonight, please." She didn't argue. The penthouse was everything Obsidian had suggested, and none of what she had expected. High above the city, with glass walls that made the Seattle skyline feel like a painting you lived inside. Not cold, not performatively minimal, but quiet in the way of a space that had been made livable rather than impressive. Books on actual shelves. A kitchen that had been used. A corner with a small chair worn soft at the armrests angled toward the window. He met them at the private elevator. One look at Karen's face, brave and tired and holding Georgina's hand with both of hers. And something moved across his expression that she had no category for. "I'm sorry," he said. Not to the room, to Georgina directly. "I never should have let you get close to any of this. This is my fault." "Tell me everything," she said. He did. Park Sung-jin. 2 years of territorial pressure that had been managed, contained, answered with precision. Until the gala. Until his lieutenant sent a message saying that Kang Min had watched a woman the entire evening and hadn't looked at anyone else. 2 years of failed leverage had just become one very clear target. The fire was a message. "We know who she is. We know where she lives." Su Yan arrived an hour later with Julian Bay, a man of careful suits and careful eyes, and the particular manner of a lawyer who has spent years delivering difficult information as gently as accuracy permits. He set documents on the table in front of Georgina and looked at her with something that was not quite sympathy but was close to it. "Mr. Kang wants you to have financial protection," he said. "A trust, in your name and Karen's, property, security arrangements, measures that would be triggered if, in the event that..." He's planning for if he dies, Georgina said. The room was very quiet. Julian's expression didn't waver. He's planning for every contingency. That's how he's stayed alive this long. Taeyang drove her back to her apartment the next day to collect more of Karen's things. They rode in silence for several blocks. She watched the city through the window, filing away the route, storing information out of habit. He's a good man. Taeyang's voice was quiet, offered to the windshield rather than to her. Better than this world has deserved from him. You're loyal to him, she said. He saved my life when I was 19. I'd die for him without thinking about it. A pause. She watched his eyes in the rearview mirror, steady, assessing, and then something softer. But I've been with him for 11 years. I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. She didn't answer. It should be reassuring, he said, reading her silence correctly. When something matters to Kang Min, he protects it with everything. You and Karen, you're already protected whether you accept anything from him or not. That's not negotiation. That's already done. She thought about that for the rest of the drive. Park Sung-jin arrived at the penthouse the following evening. 3 visible men. More in the vehicles below, Taeyang had counted. He came with the particular ease of someone who has decided the outcome of a conversation before arriving at it. And he wore that certainty the way he wore his suit. Expensively, deliberately, so you would notice. Kang Min sent Georgina and Karen to the safe room without discussion. She went. In the room there was a monitor, small, mounted to the wall, showing the living room in flat gray light. She watched. Kang Min, Park said, with the warmth of a man who wants you to believe he doesn't enjoy what he's about to do. You're losing. Every week costs you more than the last. Accept partnership. You keep entertainment, I take imports. Everyone profits. This can be finished tonight, I'm not interested. Park smiled. It was the smile of a man who had prepared for this answer. Even if the alternative involves the people you love. Kang Min went very still. It was the stillness of someone who has practiced not reacting to exactly this, who has built the discipline over years, and who is at this particular moment applying every ounce of it. 24 hours, Park said pleasantly. Think about it. After he left, Georgina watched Kang Min stand alone. His shoulders carried something she had never seen on them before. Not defeat, but the particular weight of a man trying to hold too many things at once and feeling each one. He pressed one hand to the back of his neck and was still for a long time. She made her decision in that room. I need to meet Park Sung-jin. Kang Min's expression went flat in the way she had learned meant he was choosing his response very carefully. Absolutely not. Hear me out. Hear me out. Across the table, Su Yan leaned forward almost imperceptibly. Her eyes moved between them and then settled on Georgina with an attention that sharpened into something like recognition. Listen to her, Su Yan said. Georgina laid it out. She had been thinking about it since the confrontation, turning it over, testing every edge of it. Park Sung-jin needed legitimacy, clean fronts, social credibility, cultural integration into a city that was watching him carefully. What he could not buy with territory or money was the kind of access that came from being woven into the legitimate fabric of Seattle's cultural life. That was a specific and difficult thing to acquire. She happened to have it. Karen & Co. Events, a high-end hospitality and catering brand that she had been building in her head for 3 years and on paper for 6 months. Prestigious, socially embedded. The kind of brand that opened doors Park Sung-jin could not force. She would offer him a 2-year investment partnership with fixed terms and exit clauses in her favor. Karen's name on the building and nowhere near anything else. Her business, her decisions, her exit. Kang Min stared at her when she finished. You'd be walking into his world, he said. His voice was controlled, and the control was doing a lot of work. I'd be walking in with leverage. He needs what I'm offering more than he needs this war. She held his gaze. You told me you'd do anything to protect us. Let me protect you too. Let me protect what we're building. The silence was long and specific. If he touches you, he won't. Because I'm the thing he wants, and I'm offering it to him voluntarily on my terms. She reached across the table and put her hand over his. This is not a sacrifice, this is strategy. And I'm asking you to trust me the way I've trusted you.